on it.
Are you asking me specifically?
Or open to anybody? Yeah.
Yeah, it's open to anybody. You're not on the spot.
I think one thing that's challenging is trying to manage, at the end of the spring season, how do you let your kids know which rosters they're going to make next year, and also managing tryouts, not knowing when they're going to happen. So with things being up in the air, that's been a struggle to figure out, the internal club timeline of releasing rosters and hosting tryouts, not knowing, which kids are going to be able to come back and that sort of thing. So if anyone has any thoughts about how they're going to manage, releasing their rosters for next fall without knowing when tryouts are really going to happen, I think that would be really helpful.
I think, oh, go ahead.
This is Mary from Calvert Soccer Association. So I think we have talked about this also, and our concern is more on when the window for the tryouts will be based on what the other leagues are doing. For example, EDP just sent an email out as this webinar was going on, indicating 3 different scenarios for what a season may look like, and that pushes to mid-July for scenario 3 for them. So with that, when do we run a tryouts? Because teams change every season. You either, as a coach, you're either letting some people go, or you're picking up new players, or players leave, or things like that. So the challenge is when do you do this window of tryouts to prevent teams being in a situation where they don't have enough players to compete in their leagues if their leagues are running through midsummer.
Yeah, and I think that's really important for the discussion in general, because again, it's league based. So what happens if you have teams in your club that are, maybe in a league that says, okay, spring is scrapped, it's over, right? And so you've got some teams that are finished, and you've also got some teams in the club that are going to continue. One thing that has been discussed is whether we just offer everybody a position on the team for next year that you currently have in your club. However, we do want the feedback as to whether you feel that there needs to be a tryout window that's maybe mandated by the state. And again, I think there's the unknown, right? It really depends on the leagues and the decision, which, when does it apply? Does it apply? Is there a June, July, league? If we're not finishing until July, is that when we impose, and what's that going to look like? So thoughts are centered.
I kind of think with that spring is finished. I mean, we probably need to realize that there's probably not going to be much happening in the spring. Even if we got the green light at the end of May that things were getting better, it's really going to be my guess is it's going to be a June or July return to play. And that's just, it could, it could be farther than that. We don't know. That's the problem. USU soccer, as most of you heard on the line, they've already, as far as nationals and regionals are scrapped. There's not going to be a regional event this year in the summer, and there's not going to be a national event in the summer. So the best we can hope for is something in the state of Maryland, some kind of tournament that the state cup director can put together to try to have some kind of tournament as far as state cup. And by the way, President's Cup follows the same thing. That's been canceled also. So how about some other input or questions about some of the issues that are facing the smaller clubs, larger clubs? I know there's a lot of people out there that have anxiety about the unknown.
Hi, this is Jen Gutman from DC Stoddard Soccer. And I guess one of my questions, and the clubs are all waiting on this trickle down, maybe hope is the right word, is that as we're contemplating whether or not we have to provide credits or refunds to, speaking specifically about our travel players, for instance, right now, will the state for the state cup, will leagues provide any sort of refund / credit for subsequent seasons? Because obviously that's something that's going to make a big difference for us making decisions around what we can provide to our families. So there is a trickle down that will happen. And, this is of course with the recognition that we're all trying to operate budgets with the unknown and operate budgets in a way that ensures that our bottom people, which are the families in all of this, are treated equitably with some transparency, and that they want to come back and continue to play soccer such that we're able as clubs to continue to operate and create teams. So the challenge is, how do you say to somebody, we're not, we aren't providing you some sort of credit, refund, or whatever it is, and yet, we're offering you a spot on a team for next year. So sign up. So curious what the trickle down potential is in terms of, you can speak obviously to Maryland State, not to the leagues, but if anybody has any insight on that, that would be helpful too. Thanks for doing this also, guys.
Well, we've already, as far as the state goes, we've already had some discussions about what type of refunds we're going to be applying to our players for this spring season or the state cup. We're still going through it. There is every club has, and the state association has, an administrative fees that it takes to even get to the point of even getting a state cup, on board, paying down payments, ordering uniforms, having the staff work on all the different needs to pull together a big state cup or an ODP or, a president's cup. So we have to figure out as a state, and that's part of the reason why we have this call, so we can get all this out in the open and all work on this together. But every club is going to have the same issue, because there's a lot of clubs out there that are small, and there's some clubs that are big. And one of the big issues out there is the refund policy. For example, if a big club refunds totally all the money back to the players and families, and a small club can't, because financially they've used that money for operation, for fields, paying coaches, insurance, on and on, administrative, that's going to destroy a smaller club. And that's one of the main reasons why we're talking today, and we're going to talk next week, and we're going to keep talking weekly until we figure this out, because the most important thing that the state wants to make sure doesn't happen is we don't want our clubs to get destroyed financially over this. So we're asking, go ahead.
Sorry, is there anyone on the call that's obviously we're having discussions across different groups, different platforms? Is there anyone on the call that's got any thoughts on this, or any any ideas that have come across in other discussions that you can share with the group?
Yes, Alan, this is Daltonato from Browser United Football Club. First, I'd like to offer some support and prayer for all of you guys in your clubs. I know we live in some tough times, but I just want to let you guys know that we're here praying for everyone to, hopefully this can come to an end soon, and we all can go back to our normal lives and do what we love. We as a club, we decided to suspend our tryouts for the 2021 season. And the main reason was, we know the tryout can take a hit emotionally on a lot of families, financially, with all the worries and stuff. So we made a decision as a club to cancel and offer all of our players opportunities to remain on the current team for the following season. And with all the tournaments being canceled, leagues, obviously there's going to be some type of refund, and we're going to be crediting all the families with those refunds, and those funds are going to be applied for the following season, for the 2021 season. That eliminates the part of going to a tryout, the stress being uncertain if you're going to be on that team or not, having to go to a different club, buying new uniforms, that can take a hit emotionally. And we worry a lot on not just on the financial part, but obviously on the psychological part and the emotional part and everything. So that's the decision we made. We're going to open and give opportunity for players from outside. Like if we have a space in certain roster, we are going to be inviting people to attend some of our training sessions once we start to practice, and then give players from outside opportunity to come in. With the players that are current in the club, if they are not happy with the club for whatever reason, obviously we're going to give them the refund, which means the credit that they have from the tournaments, and they can apply those credits towards different clubs, whatever they wish to go to. But I know as a club, we always strive to, to do our best and to win tournaments and championship and stay cup. And, but here our focus is main development, giving players opportunity to be successful, not just on the field, but off the field. And I thought that, making this decision, it gave the family some type of support, security, and making sure that they don't have to worry about trying out and going through the process, especially in this time that we're living in. So, that's what we're doing here as a club. So.
Appreciate it. Some good points there. Again, any questions or concerns with sort of that approach? Is there a a consistent feeling of offering the players, and obviously the challenge is financially for the families for next year. And what's that going to look like? How's that going to impact some of your teams and the age groups, that type of thing? Any thoughts on that approach?
This is Kristen from Thunder Soccer Club.
Hey, Kristen.
I think what we've talked a lot about those same things, and I think it makes a lot of sense to roll teams over in a lot of regards. There's a couple of areas that doesn't work for. So if you have your youngest team that doesn't exist right now, obviously there needs to be some arrangement for how you would create that team. And because I suspect we're not just going to hold everybody in the same space that they're in for spring going on. I assume we'll continue on, go to U11 to U12, etc. Additionally, when you go, you go from U10 to U11 or U12 to U13, you need to add players. So that is a consideration with all of that. I think it's a great, I think it makes a lot of sense in a lot of ways. You don't want to create added stress, added pressure for your players and their families, but those are things that as we've talked about it, have to be considered. There has to be a solution for that. Additionally, as far as the refunding process goes, without knowing at all where things stand, it's kind of hard to determine what a refund looks like, how much are you refunding. And we as a club have chosen, as a board, with our families, to continue to pay our coaches through the spring season because we want to support them as well. So with that consideration, it's, we have to consider how that impacts financially. And if we were to refund everything in full for what constitutes the spring season, then we would be out that money as well. Now that said, then if you're going to compete with a club who's going to do the other, I think you make a good point that, there's a lot of families that are going to say, yeah, but over here they did this, I'm going over there. We are not a huge club, and I think that's something we have to really consider what makes the most sense for us.
Whatever everybody knows and needs to know, that whatever decision is made, we're all going to take a financial hit. I mean, it's all, if we give a credit if we, for example, as a club, gave a credit for the next season, whether we put a summer season together or a fall season, you're going to take a financial hit because there's no money coming in. That money is already spent by most clubs. For example, just exactly what you said, as a state, we did the same. We made the same decision that the next round of payment to our ODP coaches was due last week, and we made the decision to pay them. It's the same thing. To keep, we want to try to minimize the damage as much as possible, but everybody's going to absorb some type of collateral damage. It's just inevitable. and it's sad. But what we're trying to do is, if we do it together as a total state association with, and DC, by the way, is part of us, for those who didn't know that. So Maryland and DC work together and help each other and come up with policies together as a collective unit. We'll try to minimize the damage as much as possible. If everybody starts going rogue and doing their own thing, it could be a total disaster. And that's why we felt, as a state, continued communication on a weekly basis. We should be able to work through and talk through and discuss as adults, and all these great soccer minds and business people. We could try to come up with, and with the national office and our regional rep, try to come up with a plan that will keep us all together, as whole as we can be, until this thing clears up.
Mark, this is Matt Liber from Maryland Soccerplex. I mean, I get what you're saying there, but the reality is that all these clubs are not in the same financial situation. There's no way we can do a policy across the board that's going to fit everybody. It's just not, it's not a reality.
Comments on that?
Well, just Tim Ryerson here, Ellicott City Soccer Club. Can you speak a little bit about Colorado, their decision to move forward and endorse something from the state association, taking a kind of the lead, and maybe Skip can talk to this if others can't, but how did they manage to do what they've done, and is that something that Maryland would consider?
Jim Kunz chiming in here. Colorado did not endorse anything. What they did was they put out a recommendation. And it was one of those situations where they're saying, okay, here's an idea. It's on the floor. Use it or don't use it. As an association, as a state association, states association cannot say to you as a club, you have to do this or you have to do that without reason. This would fall under that purview because, as somebody said before, you know, each club is different, and you know, one size doesn't fit all. So some clubs might be able to give back some fees, and other clubs it would bankrupt. So for a state association to chime in and said you have to do this or you have to do that, it just can't be done. So that's that part of the input.
Jim, just to follow up on that, so I think with Colorado, if I read it correctly, they posted something from the state association on their website, a statement that they weren't going to do any types of refunds, that the clubs were going to offer credits. And that they can choose to do so, and they can choose to do so in whatever way they felt was the right thing to do.
Yes, so they were putting it back in the laps of the clubs and the leagues that were involved. Correct. They were not taking a stand as a state association.
I think that's also been announced recently after they put out the initial communication. Somewhat, I wouldn't say retracted. I'm not too sure. I'm trying to get more information on that. However, it didn't go down too well, I believe. There's lots of concerns centered around it. And so there's a little bit of a retract on that statement currently that I'm still looking for more information on. If anybody has any information on that, please share it. But I believe there are challenges centered around that decision, or certainly that statement that was released last week, I believe. Any other comments with regards to, you know, the Colorado statement? Okay.
Hey,
yeah, sorry, Bob.
Oh, yeah. Can I?
Yep.
Minute, Bo from FC Frederick.
Hey, Bob.
Hey, so I think part of the point of this is, you know, obviously MSYSA draws its lifeblood and wouldn't exist but for clubs. So anything MSYSA can do to support the challenges, like this webinar, but in some like sharing some guidance or kind of best practices. And with respect to the money issue, there's no question that the most harmful to immediate operations is refunds, right? We now have a national strategy, the biggest stimulus ever. Banks willing to do forbearance options, lots of things to try and buy people time, in essence, to let, we hope, the lockdowns and all of the protocols move away at some point. We all hope that'll happen, but it's really a buying us time kind of thing. Refunds, that sort of immediately sucks money that you may have in your account that you may need to get through the summer if tryouts are delayed before the money comes in and that sort of thing. Credits are a policy option, let's say, that allow clubs to kind of fine tune it to their personal situations. I've seen some ideas about credits that may extend, for multiple years, so that the hit doesn't happen to next year's budget cycle. It's just kind of shifting it a little bit. But I'm wondering if, MSYS, I know you guys' goal is to keep every club vibrant and healthy and moving forward, and maybe some thoughtful language out that is spread out to the MSYSA community about the financial challenges that clubs are facing, and maybe even again, I don't know the downside to some recommendations about staying away from of immediate refunds, that sort of thing, and looking at other financial mitigation that might be available, because it's really, I think, about buying time. And I think that's what Tim is talking about. There's a little bit of cover that happens, right? If the state association says, hey, the thing that clubs in some sense like about Colorado, it's not that they said you can't give refunds, it's that if a club decided that they couldn't because of their current budget, it provided them a little cover, to get through a tough time and then get things back going and money, flowing in and all that kind of stuff. So, Tim, and if I'm speaking out of turn or putting some, spin to your words, just let me know. But that's sort of one of the questions. Is there something macro level MSYSA could do that provides club the ability to buy some time until tryouts, until the next deposit cycle shows up, that sort of thing? Anyway, those are my thoughts.
Oh, no, those are some good thoughts, Bo. Anybody have any want to piggyback on that? Any ideas?
This is Mary again from Calvert Soccer Association. I really like what Bo just said, and I think that would help a lot of the smaller clubs, like Calvert Soccer Association is a smaller club, in helping them when they do have to communicate with their parents and their community on what the decision is, whether it's a couple dollar refund or it's credits for next year. We as a club are now trying to figure out what all of our expenses truly are. We know that we've heard back from a couple tournaments, they're not giving back refunds, and we understand why. There's administrative costs that are associated with everything. Some are offering discounts for next year. That's fantastic. That's great. But we have to still navigate through all of our expenses and what has already been spent out, and then really end up with, what do we do? What's left? Do we give refunds in a monetary value, or do we offer credits? So having guidance from the state association and just something to reference people to, I think is critical for the smaller clubs.
I will tell you that there's most of the board of directors are on this call now listening. And what we're going to do is, after we compile this information, this has been recorded, by the way, once we compile information, we're going to try to address as many issues as we can to try to get some clarity of what we can and can't do. It's not as easy as just making a policy. We really have to, like Matt said, every club is different. and every situation is different. We have to try to come up with a scenario that's going to be fair and and equal among everyone. So, but like I said in the beginning, the most important thing is trying to make sure that whatever we can do as a unit is Maryland and DC, as a collective unit, that we try to be fair across the board for everyone.
I think what's important as well, there was some discussion, previously centered around Eastern PA Player First initiative, which was essentially club centered. It was the clubs came to the state and said and asked, and it was centered around the tryout period, but essentially it could be used almost in this situation where it's not enforced, but it's endorsed, right? So if we have the clubs that come together and agree and say, hey, look, that we need, to kind of agree upon right now, right, as a temporary endorsement, and the clubs buy into that, because again, it's also the same, from the state association, if it's endorsed by the state, but if it's also endorsed and by a certain amount of clubs, then obviously it's sort of that, missing out factor, right? If 25, 30, 40, 50 clubs are all agreeing to this, this guideline, then it forces the others, it almost makes the others look like they're not sort of towing along if they don't agree to it. So, and again, so it doesn't have to be necessarily an enforced policy. It could be something that we come to, and I know that's been discussed. Any thoughts on that, and anything that does it apply in this situation, and what's your general thoughts amongst that?
This is Matt Liber again. I think what you just said is kind of my point. If you guys put something out and 30 sign on and the rest don't, and it doesn't look like, as you said, towing the line, that's going to impact them in such a negative way that their kids are just going to leave those clubs, because parents are going to say, oh, they didn't help us out, but these clubs did. I know it's going to happen anyway, but when you have the endorsement of the state behind it, it's a whole nother weight you're putting.
Well, let's take a step further. What about not only the endorsement of the state, but what happens if USU Soccer could help formulate and endorse some financial policy? Skip, are you still on the line?
Yep, so I'm here listening, Mark.
You want to touch base on that a little bit?
Sure. And again, from our perspective, yes, we can't come out and mandate anything to the state associations and even think about from the clubs. But if we could create a statement that really covers the emotional aspect of the issue, the fact that coaches' salaries and many of the club staffs depend on their registration fees, and that realistically, when you look at what could programming, what could credits, what could donation programs, what could all of those different things do before you get into the discussions of refunds, just because of the dire financial constraints that refunds put on anybody. If we can tackle all of that consistently around the country, that might help all clubs and all elements kind of come together and try to do the right thing. Does that help, Mark?
Yeah, I mean, that's a big part. If we can get the national body to work with the states, come up with some type of language, that would help. That would help the state, and that would also help the clubs.
I mean, it's not, and again, it's not easy. And again, I had said this at the beginning, at the top, where, I think soccer is stronger. There are a lot of organizations. USA Rugby, for example, just went Chapter 11, and they were having some financial difficulties, but it was this virus that just crushed them because of the weight of their debt, that they can't get out of it, and they're going under. And, that's a huge blow to that sport. So, anything that we can do from a national perspective to at least shape the discussion so that people aren't so fast to say, oh my gosh, my kid didn't play this spring, I want all my money back. We should be able to have some sort of a really strong conversation as to why maybe that might not be the best first course of action?
Well, after this webinar is over, if we can continue this conversation with you and US Youth, try to help facilitate some type of language, that might help.
That would be a big help. And again, I'll enlist all of the state associations to be able to do this, so that it's, it really makes sense. And it's not like we're trying to keep the money. We're just trying to help everybody literally survive through this.
And that was my point with the Colorado statement. It was pretty clear that they were looking out for the clubs as well as, doing the right thing.
Absolutely.
I think that, and I'm certainly going to try and reach out and see if I can get any feedback on that situation, and how, what some of the kickbacks. Again, anything that comes out, obviously we can learn from it. There's obviously certainly been a reflection period, so I'm certainly going to look into that. Any thoughts centered around a follow-up webinar? We did sort of, wanted to use this as more of a sort of listening. So obviously over the next few days, we're going to be looking for a possibly a follow-up webinar next week. Any thoughts or anything that you feel needs to be added or just generally followed up on?
I'm Rod with Brazil United Soccer Academy down in Eastern Shore. A couple of things like I've been checking on and seeing, like I have family in Italy, and we know the chaos is going over there. I don't see we getting through the spring season unless it's in the middle of the summer, and that creates a bunch of other complications for us as club, as operational. I think MSYSA and US Soccer Association has to start discussing maybe just push the whole spring season towards fall, and just because that you don't have the transfer from U12 to U13, so you don't have 9v9 go 11v11. You don't have the 7v7 going 9v9. Then we actually could keep our rosters the way they are from spring to the fall. And then we just go all the change year round on the year calendar. I think that would get, when we talk about a refund or just like a credit for the next season, if you have the same setup from spring to the fall, I think it's going to be easier to explain to the parents why we're doing that. And then it's going to be easier for all the associations to back up the clubs on all this movement. I truly don't believe we're going to get any spring season on. I think like learning from Italy and everything that's happening over there and how things go in New York, unless we go July, I don't think we're going to get anything done for spring. So we need to start having serious conversations about just rolling everything over and only doing all the changes in the end of the year. So that's one of the discussions I think we should start having. That's one of the inputs I would like to add up. And because it's this completely unknown, it's complicated, but the way things are running, again, I don't think we're gonna get on the field by July, August.
I agree.
This is Marcelo Gangotena from FC Dallas. I think it's a great that the proposal that we have on the table, the U.S. Youth Soccer and the state associations should come some sort of language in support of the part of refund or no refund for the club. And what I hear is there's going to be on the table on the board of directors and each institution at the state level and also at the national level. I wanted to make an urgency for this support or this language has to come as soon as possible. It has to come as soon as possible because right now it's a lot of phone calls, and I assume everybody has that. A lot of phone calls about what is going to happen with the money. What about the refunds and stuff? So if we have that statement from the state association or U.S. Youth Soccer as soon as possible, it will be a huge help.
No, I think this is good because I feel good about this webinar because I think we're getting somewhere. Because if we didn't have this webinar today, we might not have even, and if we didn't have Skip Gilbert, the U.S. you CEO on, we might not have been able to get the ball rolling on a national level. And having a backup, can someone mute, please? There you go. To have U.S. Youth national backing language for a refund policy is going to be huge, I think, because it's not only going to be backed by the state, but it's going to be backed by the national body, which should be a good thing. One thing else I wanted to mention, I'm also a business owner, not just president of MSYSA, and we're going through right now the payroll protection plan through the U.S. government is active tomorrow. You should be going on our site. We have some information on how to log on, but for profit and nonprofit, you should be filling out the form and getting your payroll stubs and information that the bank is requiring so that you can get in the queue of the Small Business Administration loan or grant program, because it could protect you and help bring some money into your clubs. While we, like Bo said, that's a benefit to kind of like hold us over, give us a little bit of time, payroll, rent, insurance, that type of thing, keep you guys viable until hopefully this passes us by.
Yeah,
this is Rick Watts with St. Mary's Youth Soccer. So I hear kind of, everybody's talking either like full refunds or full credits. Is anybody considering partial credits to cover, non-recoverable expenses versus their what I would call recoverable expenses?
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be. I don't think language would be a full refund. As I said earlier in the conversation before we even got to this, there's so much administrative costs to run your club, to pay for your operation, that percentage-wise, it wouldn't be fair to you to give a full refund or a full credit. Whatever the language of U.S. Youth and state of Maryland and club leadership can come up with to help protect all of you. In my mind, I would never think of a full refund or a full credit. It would hurt too many of clubs throughout the state.
Hey, Mark.
Hey, Mark, sorry.
So my question is
Yeah.
Go ahead. Elite Soccer, go ahead.
Okay, my question is, you're talking about a loan. Is it something we're gonna reimburse later, or is just the money we get from the state to face, the operation costs we're going through now?
No, that loan that I'm talking about is through the SBA, Small Business Administration, through the government. Some of it is in a loan with a low interest rate. The other is a grant where that if you keep everybody on your staff, you don't have to pay most of it doesn't have to be paid back. So I would definitely get our website actually has some information that you could click right on and get right to the app.
Mark, just a quick correction. The PPP is not through the SBA. It's through your local lenders.
Yeah, but it's through your local lender is facilitating it, but it's through the SBA.
But you don't apply through the SBA. You apply through your local lender.
That's exactly right. And I would also recommend that if you have a CPA or an accountant, that you contact them to help with the information, because it will go a lot easier. In fact, I'm at my office right now and they're all working on it, because you want to get in the queue as quick as possible, because even though there's billions of dollars that they're giving out, that's going to go very quickly. So you got to get locked in by tomorrow if you can.
Yeah, this Marcel again. Is Skip there? Are you Skip is still there here with us?
Skip, are you still here?
Skip?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I just wanted to confirm. I know, Mark, you are confirming that you're gonna work with your board of directors in Maryland on terms of the wording for the partial credit or the refund. But I'd like to hear some sort of confirmation that this is going to happen and the U.S. Youth Soccer Board and the urgency that the clubs and the state associations need. Can you let us know if you're going to work on that this week?
Yeah, I'm starting to work on that right now. So we'll get something to you as fast as we can. We just want to make sure that it's wordsmith accordingly to hit all of the right message points, to hit all of the right pull all the right heartstrings. But again, be something that's of useful and value.
And like I said, most of the board members for the state of Maryland are on this call. So we're going to have a conference call later to discuss the information that Skip and the U.S. Youth National Office is going to be producing. So we'll work on it collectively to try to get the best language.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, guys.
I know you're going to do that for Maryland. I am in Virginia, so that's the reason my concern. I don't know if any board of directors from Virginia is in this call, and therefore I wanted the confirmation from the Skip that you guys are going to do that. And I assume it's going to be distributed to the state association.
Yeah, no, we'll make sure Phil Summers gets a copy of it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we'll be good.
Guys, we're just a little over an hour, so I kind of want to keep us on time. So I appreciate everybody getting on the call. There's lots of information, obviously lots of things that we need to discuss, and hopefully we'll put some of that in next week's webinar. Mark, final words.
Yeah, so we're planning. MSYSA is planning to do this, having a weekly call, because if we don't do this on a weekly basis, a lot of things are going to fall through the cracks. So stay tuned for another invite for next week. By next week, I'm fairly certain that we should have some language that we can at least start and discuss between U.S. Youth and Skip and the MSYSA board. Hopefully we can come up with something we can discuss it in more detail next week. And then also that the information that we're going to be discussing, which certainly be more of talking about the refunds and the credits. I'm reading in some private chats that some of the members across Maryland are asking to let you guys know.
Flo, anything?
Yeah, I just encourage all the clubs to go onto the website and scroll into the COVID-19 updates and resources, go into the state and government resources, as well as the economic resources tab, which will give you the different plans that are out there, the CARES Act and all the different, whether it's grants or loans that nonprofits certainly could apply for. And for-profits as well. There's different types of loans. I absolutely was on a webinar with our bank, and they were sharing that with the Baltimore Development Group, that they want everyone to apply for these. These are for nonprofits and small businesses. Some of these are grants, and some of these loans will be forgiven, down the road. They want to keep people employed. They want to try to help the businesses as much as they can.
Listen,
so I encourage you to do that.
I'm really close with my bank, from the president all the way down to the tellers. I know them all. I talk to them all the time. I'm actually on the board of my bank, and they don't even know, half of them don't even know what's going on yet, because it changes almost daily. That's why they think that by tomorrow, they're going to have the definitive information they need to start processing these applications. So it's really important that you guys take it serious, because it could be the conduit between the bank and your club for the next 2 months to help get through these uncertain times. But stay tuned we appreciate, we had quite a few people. We had over 120 people on the call today. So appreciate everybody taking the time to get on the call. Let's stay together weekly. Let's get some information. Let's move forward. Contact our state office is still working, even though they're not in the office, but you can still send emails. You can still contact us with questions after this call if you want, and constantly use the website as a source for information as we move forward. We want to thank Skip.
Mark, I'm sorry, we just want to also make sure that the clubs, go on to the Got Sport webinar and sign up for those webinars, so we can get ahead of the curve regarding our new registration platform moving forward for the years ahead. I think it's important. That's something we can do while we're sitting home. Okay?
It's also. I also want to thank Skip Gilbert from US Youth for I'm telling you, he's jammed. It was hard to get to him, and I really appreciate you taking the time to listen to our clubs in Maryland and help us get through this. And also Jim Koontz, who brings a wealth of knowledge because he was president of Eastern Pennsylvania for a long time, and now he represents our region. Jessica Hafer wanted to say just one shout out about what she's working on. Jessica, go ahead.
Hi, everybody. I just was going to say what Flo had just shared, to please go on our MSYSA website, and on the news feed, there is the link for you to directly register for one of our webinar sessions to set everyone up, your clubs up with our new registration platform with Got Sport. And again, if anyone has any questions, you're always welcome to call me. Most of you already have my cell phone number, and that's 410-330-8692. So if you need any help with your registrations and sign-ups, and to please make sure you get on one of those webinar sessions with Got Sport with us next week, that would be fantastic. Stay safe.
Yeah, thanks, Jessica. So just from me, as you can see there, that's my cell phone, 240-426-1112. I'd like to create a WhatsApp group, try and get everybody together. So please text me. I'm going to put the group together and hopefully get everybody into sort of one place. I really appreciate everybody being on the call. Feel free to reach out anytime. Thanks very much, guys, and look forward to seeing you next week on the call.
Thanks, guys.
Man.